Every now and again, a show comes along that makes you remember why you love TV. Shrinking is, in my opinion, the best current show to watch on any platform, anywhere, right now. Let me tell you why. Welcome to the Smoking Hot Nerds. When I saw the first trailer for Shrinking, my initial thought was, no thank you. I wasn't interested in a show about a therapist dealing with his own issues, but boy was I wrong. Had I not known a handful of folks involved in the making of the show, I may not have dove into it, but I'm certainly happy that I did. It certainly is a show about a therapist whose wife recently died and is in the process of putting the pieces together, but it's also a show about a lot of imperfect people imperfectly trying to solve the Rubik's Cube of life, the therapists in the show being the most imperfect and complicated of them all, and each find wisdom and healing in wonderfully, improbably unexpected places. Now in its second season, I've watched the premiere season about 3 times through, and it just keeps getting better. When a show is this good, it's scary to jump into a second season, but thankfully, the first few episodes of season 2 are just as full of heart, humor, and genuinely good storytelling as the first. There's so much good to talk about when it comes to Shrinking, but let's dive into the cast first. And the best part of this show, playing his best character of all time, Harrison Ford. It's amazing to watch him indulge in a grounded, real, sarcastic, flawed, and deeply feeling character. The man who played the biggest characters in the biggest franchises brings me to tears in almost every episode for a number of reasons. Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Jack Ryan, Dr. Richard Kimball, and President James Marshall have nothing on this character. This is the greatest performance of his long and impressive career, hands down. His character, Paul, has early onset Parkinson's and deals with the diagnosis while also dealing with his failed relationship with his daughter, also brilliantly played by Lily Rabe, while simultaneously running a psychology practice in which his therapists and patients seem to be going off the rails. And yet, despite all he's occupied with, he's the glue that holds the entire show together. He's incredibly vulnerable at times, both physically and emotionally, which is something none of us are used to seeing from Harrison Ford. Ford's character has truly deep relationships with Gabby and Jimmy's characters, played by Jessica Williams and Jason Segel, respectively. He's abrasive and rude, soft and cuddly at times, and at one point gets accidentally incredibly high, and it's an absolute joy to watch Ford be goofy and off-center. He develops a very grandfatherly relationship with Jimmy's daughter Alice, brilliantly played by Lukita Maxwell, and all of their scenes together are the kind of television that reminds me why I love making art. Maxwell's Alice is remarkably vulnerable, and she truly captures what a young woman of high school age would and could be feeling after being left to navigate the world without her mom in the midst of a spiraling dad, while also facing her own desire to grow up a little quicker than her father would like. Not to mention all of the actors that get to work with Harrison Ford. As a failed actor myself, I couldn't even fathom having one scene with Harrison Ford, like in this brilliant episode, or being able to work with him on an almost daily basis, especially in the context of this wonderfully written show. I can't say enough great things about Harrison Ford in Shrinking, and I truly hope you take the time to see it. The relatively unknown Luke Tenney plays Sean, a military vet dealing with PTSD who gets accidentally placed in Jimmy's care. He's sensitive and vulnerable, yet carries with him an underpinning of danger. He develops incredible relationships with all of the characters around him and adds to the ensemble feeling of the cast and show in a relatable way. He's a fish out of water at the beginning, yet somehow brings out the best in everyone around him. Tenney plays the character in an incredibly relatable way, and his chemistry with the rest of the cast is really impressive. Michael Urie plays Brian, the best friend to Segel's Jimmy, albeit estranged at first, and plays a wonderfully wounded friend to both Jimmy and his deceased wife, and the subplot of his marriage is a realistic conflict within the characters' story arcs. Urie plays a perfect LA guy with a grounded sense of who he is and why he does what he does. It's a masterclass in acting restraint. Heidi Gardner sheds her SNL characters to play the deeply relatable character of Grace. She's both Jimmy's greatest success story and horrendous failure, and Gardner plays Grace at Emmy-winning levels. Sometimes when we see an actor as a, quote, comic actor, it's hard to take them seriously in a more serious role, but Gardner tears that misconception to shreds and bears her absolute soul in this part. It's brilliant, and she carries the heart of the plot forward throughout the entire season. Krista Miller and Ted McGinley as the somewhat overly involved neighbors Liz and Derek are perfect. If there's a more impressive part of this show than Harrison Ford, then it's these two. Somehow they manage to make you love them, be annoyed by them, understand and empathize with them, and ultimately completely fall in love with them. Ted McGinley's Derek is a recent retiree from a presumably very successful career, and his decision to be at home and enjoy the fruits of his labors causes much consternation within Miller's Liz, a stay-at-home mom turned empty nester. She can be incredibly mean to Derek, but his happy-go-lucky attitude and obvious intense love for his wife belays any conflict and strangely makes one jealous of their relationship. I rarely laugh out loud because I'm relatively dead inside, but I LOL on a regular basis when these two are on screen. They are a gift to the show and an absolute gift to television in general. It's like with Harrison Ford, you get to see two actors that you know, but have never really seen them express themselves in these characters before, and they are so good at it. Their expertise and their acting prowess is completely on display with this show. I want this show to go on for 10 seasons just to get to know them better. McGinley is perfectly glib, supportive, sarcastic, and genuine, and Miller plays Liz in such a way that truly makes you love her despite her incredibly unlikable traits. There are so many more performances and actors to mention because the show is just fantastic, but I'll finish up this portion with talking about the main characters. I think in today's casting climate, chemistry seems to come last. It's brutal watching shows in which characters are supposed to like each other, fight with each other, or be in love with each other, and all we see are awkward interactions and bad acting. But in the case of Shrinking, you get great writing and incredible chemistry on display, and particularly by Segel and Williams. They play co-workers and therapists in Ford's Paul's practice, and each take their own unique approach to therapy, delivering real and seemingly excellent results, albeit through unconventional methods. The relationship between Gabby and Jimmy is sincere and heartfelt and complicated at times, being that Gabby was Jimmy's late wife's best friend. And that's really where my only complaint comes from. They do end up being friends with benefits later in the season, and while it makes sense, it's perfectly executed and believable. I don't want it. I didn't want to see these two characters hook up, nor do I really want to see Jason Segel's nipples, but at least these two characters are played in such a way that makes it make sense and makes you feel that there's true, genuine friendship and love between the two characters. Regarding Jessica Williams, I've never seen her in anything leading up to this, so I was blown away by her comedic prowess and brilliance in playing off well-seasoned vets and legends like Segel and Harrison Ford. I don't know if there's a better casting on TV today. She is so funny and so realistic and grounds her character and the characters around her in comedy that is hilarious but also makes sense. She was, of course, in the somewhat polarizing reimagining of Roadhouse, and while she certainly did what she could, there was little accounting for the horrific writing of this movie. Great actors can do little with bad material, but in this case she does a lot with great material. Which leads me to the writing. Oh boy, the writing. This show gives relatively unknown actors a platform to show their skills and veteran actors something new to showcase. It's the way writing should look and how stories should go. At the core of the series is Jimmy and Alice's loss of his wife and her mother, which sets Jimmy's course of taking radical therapy techniques with his patients. It's rare, although it shouldn't be, to see a moment or a through line of a series fully realized by the end of the series season. Jimmy's increasingly heightened methods with his patients are rewarded with them becoming happier, stronger, and better people right up to the point that one of his patients takes the incredibly believable road of over-applying and taking Jimmy's advice to the extreme by attempting to boop her abusive boyfriend right to his presumed death. It's no secret that I think Disney Plus's Agatha All Along and The Acolyte were masterclasses in what not to do, how not to write, and how not to direct actors, and my feelings feel exceptionally justified when compared to a beautiful piece of art such as Shrinking. The aforementioned Marvel and Star Wars properties relied on audience subversion, retelling the same story a number of times in different ways, episode after episode, and gave their actors absolutely nothing to work with in terms of dialogue, character development, or motivation. Shrinking is the opposite. Shrinking is character development to a T. Each one of them has their own unique perspective on each plot situation, and you genuinely feel what they're feeling. And how these actors are directed, if they even needed to be directed because they're so amazing, is spot on. It honors the script, it honors the characters, and the gorgeous cinematography only heightens what an all-out beautifully structured show this is from top to bottom. I don't usually go down this road, but I want to tread this water carefully and respectfully. We live in an era of emphasis, and some might say overemphasis, on diversity casting, ticking boxes, and the inclusion of marginalized perspectives into TV and film. As a director myself, I always prided myself on casting in such a way that brought an excellent level of unique perspective and, dare I say, representation to a project. This show, Shrinking, is how you do diversity. Segel's Jimmy was in a multiracial marriage with his late wife, giving birth to their biracial daughter. He's currently in a multiracial situationship with his coworker, with whom he has incredible chemistry. Segel and Williams are brilliant together. Sean is black and Brian is gay and married and wins his gruff dad over to become the best man in his wedding. Liz and Derek, the rich white Pasadena couple, are investors in Sean, a black man's food truck. Harrison Ford's Paul suffers from Parkinson's, so therefore he's disabled, and is in an age-appropriate relationship that doesn't shy away from the fact that it's sexual. And to top it all off, there's very little talk at any point of identity politics being the driving force behind anyone's motivations or characterizations. It exists because it exists, but it's not the end-all be-all. Everything about this show is believable and genuinely reflects the world in which we live, rather than jamming ideas or policy or politics into a story in which it doesn't belong. Take note, Hollywood. This is how you do representation. So I brought up spoilers at the top of each episode, but if you haven't gotten to season 2 yet, then real spoilers. The most surprising and compelling part of season 2 of Shrinking so far is the introduction of Brett Goldstein, co-creator and writer of the series, cast as the man who killed Jimmy's wife in a drunk driving accident. It takes some real frickin' balls to cast yourself in the part of a character that everyone, including the audience, will probably hate at first, after playing such a redemptive and lovably amazing character in Ted Lasso. His redemptive story arc that we seem to be following is already heartfelt and emotional, yet the show isn't dwelling on it and making it the only thing. Everyone still has to live life, and it's playing out exactly how something like this would play out in life. We did not expect it, we didn't see it coming, but it doesn't change the landscape of everything to the point where it makes no sense. Again, take note, writers. It's brilliant. Goldstein is such a good actor, such a fantastic writer. I'm so glad that he and Bill Lawrence created this show. Brett Goldstein, Bill Lawrence, James Ponsel, Sophie Selig, and the entire crew, writing staff, producers, and cast should be very proud of themselves and what they've accomplished with this show. And I really do hope that you give it a try. That's it for this episode of the Smoking Hut Nerds. If you like the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you liked the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and have a great day.